our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. This we can feel all over the world. The enormous number of demonstrations, rallies, marches, national days, world days, shutdowns, port closings, walkouts. There's hardly a school, a university in the country or a city or a town where there have not been some of the largest demonstrations we have seen. There have been workers' actions, but one of the most interesting in terms of a spontaneous action was of Israel tried to hold a rally after the enormous outpouring national demonstration in Washington just a couple weeks ago. So they were going to hold a rally in Washington. They jetted people in from cities around the country. 3 plane loads came from Detroit. And when the bus drivers who were to pick them up and take them to the rally found out where they were going, they refused. They held their own walkout or sit-down job action right there at the airport. That's 1,000 people who didn't get where they were going that day. But it shows how deep the identification is with Palestine at this moment. This was a job action, not for their own pay or job conditions or pensions. This was an action for Palestine. And it was covered in a Zionist newspaper in Detroit. But it shows the sentiment and there they were described as malicious workers. No, they were class conscious workers. It's really an incredible experience, what we're seeing, a heroic struggle with incredible creativity, hang gliders soaring over so many layers of electronic barbed wire fencing, simplified drones of forces who have literally nothing except what they were able to put together in complete surrounding, in isolation that is meant to totally demoralize. In years of 16 years of US-Israeli sanctions surrounding Gaza, literally turning what was already for 75 years a site of the most densely populated, crowded, impoverished condition of refugees into literally a concentration camp. And somehow in that, forces found the ability to mobilize, to organize with iron discipline, and to act. This is really changing history. It is an incredible step forward, and it shows that Israel and the US, even with all their weapons, are not invincible, that a people's struggle is that powerful. And now in vengeance, in the ugliest vengeance we can imagine, Israel, with US-supplied bombs, is relentlessly destroying schools, hospitals, refugee camps, densely populated areas. It's 13,000 deaths, tens of thousands of injuries, more than half the deaths, children, women, civilians, those who are in every war guaranteed to be protected, and they are the targeted. So we're seeing an incredible struggle. We are also seeing a response, not only in the demonstrations and in the streets, missiles being fired from Iraq at US bases, from Yemen, 1,500 miles away, hitting targets in Israel. In Lebanon, where a third of the Israeli army has to be mobilized just to protect the northern border. In the West Bank, an uprising, and every night they face vigilante groups of settlers who go hunting like lynch mobs, grabbing anyone and imprisoning thousands and thousands of prisoners. In the West Bank, it's more than 10,000 prisoners at this point. So all of this is happening in view of the whole world. We see the images every day. This isn't long after. This isn't images that come back fuzzy. from one camera. No, it's every single day, and everyone has it in their hands on their phones. So in the midst of this is a call to open the Rafa border. Now, even under the worst sanctions, where in Gaza they couldn't export even simplest agricultural products because of sanctions, couldn't import, they couldn't trade. But just on a UN instigated humanitarian basis, they were able to get basic food, water, medicine. It was 500 trucks a day. And then that was also shut down to less than a trickle. 5 trucks some days, 10 another. Not enough to make any difference whatsoever. At a time when the Zionists have turned off the electricity, the water, all communication. So a call went out demanding that the Rafa crossing from Egypt in the Sinai to Gaza be opened for supplies. It was also an effort to flip the switch because Israel has made it clear they want to push the Palestinian population out of Gaza, be absolutely done with it, make them permanent refugee in the desert of Sinai. And the Palestinians have refused to go. And every country in the world, including Egypt, refused to be part of this. But the call is to open the border for aid and supplies to go through. In response to that call, Susan Abu Hawa, well-known Palestinian novelist, and Suzanne Adali, who's the president of the National Lawyers Guild, tried to literally in 3 days' time gather an international delegation to go to Egypt, to join with the Egyptians who were trying to get with supplies to the Rafah border, where already there are hundreds of trucks. They stretch for miles full of supplies. But the hope was that some attention, some focus on these trucks of supplies that are right there, that if the border were open, could take in essential food and medicine, that the border could be opened. So this was a pressure campaign. We were invited from Workers' World to be part of it. And both I myself went, Danny O'Brien from Portland, and we're very proud to go, along with a delegation of about 20 individuals, organizations, from Black Agenda Report, from Veterans for Peace, from all number of different organizations, from Samidoun, from Philadelphia Justice for Palestine. And our hope was that by our presence there, along with the Egyptian presence, it would be possible to actually push through publicity for supplies to be opened into Rafah. Unfortunately, as we arrived at the buses, we were accepted by the Egyptian delegation as part of their delegation. Our names were submitted, our passports, and all was accepted. And yet, the morning that we appeared, just 3 days, as I say, all this planning was done very quickly. How to get to Cairo so quickly, how to add our names, how to meet. But when we got there, we were told no foreign participants would be allowed, only Egyptians in their buses and the trucks of supplies. Now, that was a disappointment. It was a setback for us because we very much wanted to be part of this. At the same time, it was how do we make our demand resonate around the world? We took, because frankly, the Rafah border is controlled by US and Israel. This is part of the Camp David Accords from 1978, that the price that Egypt paid for the return of the Sinai was this border into Gaza. They don't have control over. It really is controlled by US imperialism. That is the crisis that we're in, and that is who is stopping aid. We wanted to take a letter of protest, such as many foreign delegations do when they go to all different countries, to the US Embassy in Cairo. We alerted them gave them date, time, who was involved. And when we appeared the next day, instead of even accepting the letter, even if they were going to put it immediately in the trash, but instead of accepting the letter, they sent, when the US Embassy personnel came out, trucks arrived, he snapped his fingers, and we were all arrested, detained for several hours. That is the US weight and force in Cairo today and around the world, which they flaunt, which they're more than anxious to show how powerful they are in the face of this absolutely brutal war. And this is the very force, the imperialist force, that is providing the weapons that are bombing Gaza today. And that's not a hidden fact. None of these things are hidden, unknown, unexpected. They're covered daily, even in the corporate media, as was Biden's hug of Netanyahu, both of them war criminals. So that's what we face in the world today. We were determined not to be demoralized or discouraged by this. It takes an even broader campaign. And at this point, when the Palestinians continue to fight under these enormous odds, our responsibility, our determination is to, in every way we can, in the streets, every single day, to be, and it's reflected, everyone here who's been part of making the signs, thinking of the slogans of war crimes and stop this genocide and condemning the US aid that makes it possible. Every one of those signs and messages are essential to show around the world that we stand with Palestine. It's confronting the US agenda and confronting the Zionist agenda. We also are in full solidarity with the resistance that is fighting with everything they have and is a united resistance. There are all sorts of condemnations again and again of Hamas, as if that's the only force fighting. Now, Hamas is the elected, democratically elected government of Gaza today. The US refers to them only as terrorists because, of course, any government they don't like, they refuse to accept, and they try to starve it down over years, as we know of Cuba, of Venezuela, of Nicaragua, of more than 40 sanctioned countries. But the sanctions on Gaza today are complete effort at mass strangulation of a whole population. It's a whole new dangerous dimension. And flaunting it, doing it publicly, is making a threat on every country of the world. It's why we can't allow it. There is an action on Monday calling for Restore Historic Palestine, organized by the Bronx Anti-War Coalition, saying land back, that the state of Israel should never have been accepted by the United Nations, that from the beginning it was a colonial project, ripping away the rights of the Palestinian population, that the only solution is an end of the state of Israel and a Palestine where everyone has rights. So let me encourage everyone who's listening to be part of that action, Restore Historic Palestine, in front of the United Nations, demanding land back. It's the kind of actions that are taking place, as I say, every day. We want to condemn again the viciousness of this attack, the violence of this attack. Everyone here who's following the coverage, let's all of us continue to say that in our thousands and in our millions, we are all Palestinians.